Sonic Talk.
Hello everybody, welcome to Sonic Talk episode 608. Today recording live on Wednesday the 26th of February as we approach the 28th or the 28th, 29th. So we get an extra day, leap year. I talked about that last year. In fact, just before we press go on this, we were talking about the show from last week, which I'll bring up in a second, because obviously you might want to know what the show's about. The show is generally about electronic music, music production, live production, software, synthesizers, electronic instruments, studio work, all the things that surround the creation and the performance of electronic popular music, any kind of music, not just electronic music. But so anyway, that's what you're in store for. If you've never come across this podcast at all before, every Wednesday at 4 p.m. UK time we stream live to Facebook, to Twitch and to YouTube. But as I was saying just before I hit go, last week we were talking about Bond themes, and I played a tiny clip from the Billie Eilish performance at the Brits, and Facebook just killed the live stream instantly. YouTube was okay, but said, you can't monetize it. You know, it's got a copyright claim, but don't worry about it. It's nothing difficult. But Facebook just chopped it off, and I had to do 3 or 4 different edits with sort of tinier and tinier amounts of, just to give the topic some context. And eventually I got it up there online. So if you're wondering what happened to the live stream on Facebook, that's what happened. Anyway, let's say hello to some guests. We'll start with, we've got a couple of favourites from last week. We've got Mr. Rich Hilton, who's there in Connecticut, where you've seen his I guess is that your den, your man cave, or is it a special music room, or I'm not quite sure what it is. We've never discussed this before. Oh, it's the hey, take a drink already, and it's only been me speaking.
I started off this way. I avoided it throughout all of last week, and now I started off with that. This is a converted upstairs bedroom that is now sort of my office and man cave, and where I work and where I hang, and there's computers everywhere, and there's a TV over there, and there's a couch, and it's
it's
my
the place
room.
where you go for some me time, or you time rather.
Indeed.
Well, Rich, of course, is on the road a lot with Chic. Just a brief hiatus in between, multiple gigs that's coming up, and that we're going to. In fact, I think we're going to see you in Bristol. But I noticed there was a gig announced, and I might have to talk to you offline about that later. I think we should do a rig tour or something. To come up with a reason to film you in your natural habitat, Rich. That'll be great fun.
I'd love that. We'll figure something out. Well, lovely to have you, Rich, of course. And also from last week, but back in his London studio, we got Mr. Yoad Nevo, who's there. And is it Nevo Sound or Nevo Sound Mark II? Do you still call it Nevo Sound? What's the studio? Has it got
Nevo
a name?
Sound, yeah.
Nevo Sound. Right.
Yeah, it just moved, but it's the same.
It's the same.
Same thing, yeah.
Well, Yoad is, of course, mix engineer, producer, writer, and waves developer, and and collector of enormous amounts of MIDI equipment
of metal. Yeah, I like metal.
Is that what it is? Is there a specific? Have you got any flavour of metal? Is it some sort of alloy, or is it you prefer the pure stuff?
I think it's whatever it is, brushed aluminum.
That's it.
I think that's the common denominator. Yeah.
Well, lovely to have you, Yoad, of course, and we also have
Great to be here.
Mr. Gaz Williams, who's joined us.
Yes.
Where bizarrely, so take us through what just happened there, because you've dialed in again like you normally do. You're using Catalina, right? We should say Catalina. Catalina is just messing it all up, right?
Yeah, Catalina is just incredibly is overtly sensitive about anything security issues. So
highly
like
protective.
Highly protective. And, I did that and ahhing about going up to Catalina. Once all of my favorite software that I use had sort of given it the green light, I thought, okay, because I like to try and stay abreast of things, but I was also kind of going, Catalina. But yeah, that's what causes grief. And literally what sorted it out was just disabling the settings, blocking the settings actually, and then unblocking the settings and that sort of.
This is allowing the camera and microphone access to the web browser.
Exactly. Yeah. So all things like that.
It's very permission based, isn't it, Catalina?
Massively.
It's terrifying. There's lots of, are you sure? Yeah. Would you like me to?
Yeah, and trying to install stuff is kind of difficult, and obviously, now there's no 32-bit sort of software as well in there, so it really is a kind of. Tread carefully if you are going to update to it, because I think in the most it's working well for me, but I don't actually really see a lot of benefits from going up to it. So anyway, I'm here now.
You will feel the benefit at some point, because obviously there'll be things that only work in it, maybe, probably at some point. We'll see.
Not unlike Snow Leopard and Mountain Lion, this is sort of a maintenance release that reduces clutter in the OS. That was essentially their mission with Catalina, was to get all the 32-bit code finally out of there, break it down to a 64-bit, fully 64-bit operating system. And when you purge things like that, think back to Mountain Lion, think back to Snow Leopard. This is something that is not new. Now, I have been running Catalina for months and months and months on a different computer, not on my main DAW. And it's no problem. It's not a problem.
I think it's just getting used to it. I think, the consistency issue, I think, is what the problem that Gaz is having, because he got it set up and then it didn't work. And then it didn't
work. Well, there may be driver compatibility issues, for example. There could be any number of things like that, but blame the operating system is a little tough on me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I have a tough time with blaming the OS.
That's just saying it worked before.
Blaming the operator, you say.
No, but shit happens, and it happens in all the operating systems.
Yeah, I suppose the thing is you don't want stuff happening when you're 2 minutes away from live and it's not working like it did a minute ago.
There's that.
Yeah, there's that. There's that. I think that's a reasonable assumption, expectation, is it not, of any operating system? I think that'd be fine.
I like to live on
a space station
maybe
docking
you should
system,
have come. Maybe you should have come 15 minutes ago.
Well, we did with that last
I
time.
basically just put this together today. I usually am sitting here for 20 minutes before the show. I ran in here to get this going today, so I can understand.
Yeah.
I'm not unsympathetic.
All right. Okay. Well, let's leave that behind, and let's talk about. Well, we'll throw in this kind of last minute topic, because what actually happened while we were in between me sending the topics out and now. Elektron have dropped their model cycles, and I have got a little bit of video. I believe this is Cenk, aka Dataline, with 12 minutes of jam on his custom. He's obviously had a custom paint job. Let's turn it up a bit. And as Cenk or Dataline can do, he makes sort of basically any piece of equipment seem desirable, and you just think, oh yeah, man, I wish I could do stuff like that. And then he's the only person who actually can. So this is the model. It's very similar to the model samples. It's but I believe it's 6 tracks. 3 tracks of FM voice machines. It's based on machines. So if you've been watching the teasers, there's been these little sort of machine animations, and I think each one of those represents one of the machines, but it's essentially FM voiced stuff as far as I understand. Gaz, I'm going to go to you first, because you've been following it and did bring it to our attention that it had come up. So maybe you can summarise and make me seem more intelligent than I am.
Well, we expected the model. When the model samples dropped last year, we expected that to be the start of a new range of a lower entry price range of Elektron products. And when the samples first came out, the model samples, it seemed a little bit expensive. It's now kind of come down in price, and I think it's found the sweet spot. So I'm hoping, because I don't know if the prices have been announced just yet, but I'm hoping that the price is going to be similar, which I think is around the sort of €300, £250 sort of mark. Maybe someone can chip in with that. However, the reason why I mention that is that it's exactly the same kind of chassis, if you want to call it that, and button layout as the model samples, but very interesting in that it's using FM, but using FM in a way that is
more digitone-like, perhaps.
Yeah, eminently tweakable, and six tracks, 96 patterns, I believe. No song mode So this is, I think, I can't remember if you can chain on it, but there's no sort of song mode as such. So very much geared around a performance idiom. I mean, and also, one of the big things that made the model samples different from previous Elektron boxes was it's just like pretty much one knob per function, as opposed to Elektron typically employ very much a menu divey kind of, or certainly, a menu-based system, whereas this lays out everything for you. So makes sense, I think, going along the same sort of format here.
Yeah.
And the choices of controls seem quite interesting. They're all based around stuff that is going to give you immediate results. And of course, as with all Elektron products, there is parameter locking, the idea that any step that you put in there, you can adjust all the parameters for that step. And something else that makes this one really interesting is it's a mixture of drum sounds and music sounds. So you've got your drum sounds, your kick and snare, and then there's one called metal. Then I think there's one called perk with like a percussion channel. There is then a chord channel and a tone channel. So essentially with your 6 tracks,
it's like a groove box essentially, isn't it? Yeah.
It is a groove box, really. I mean, I can imagine it would be a fantastic partner with the model samples. And I'm imagining, like the way that Volkers kind of work really nicely together, that these are going to work really well together. And again, very hands-on with all of those parameters. Because if you use Elektron equipment, which I do, I'm a huge Elektron fan. I think they are probably my favorite of them all. You do have to hold a lot in your mind because it's very difficult to see what's going on because everything is, the knobs typically are multifunction. Whereas with this, yes, okay, changing tracks around, you're still going to...
but it's got more knobs than a lot of the other stuff. Most of the other stuff has like 4 or
6 or 8 knobs. Yeah, there's 6 on the Octatrack, 8 on the Analog 4 and the Rhythm. So I think this is geared again to try and bring in a new customer, I suppose.
It's like Elektron crack.
Yeah, that's a good way of calling it. But I saw Elektron have got 2 fantastic performers, who can do product demonstrations. Cenk, obviously, Dataline, who is incredible, but also S. Matteson. I saw S doing a performance in LA recently, just using the Digitone, which this is very similar. You can there is a definite overlap between these products. The Digitone is more sophisticated. There's 3 tiers now in Elektron speak, isn't there? You've got the kind of the model range, then you've got the Digi range, and then you've got the big flagship models. But S did an entire set using just a Digitone, and fantastic. It was really good, and it went through so many territories. And he's somebody who is very adept at FM, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Them again taking an FM based instrument but making it entirely accessible. When you look at the parameters,
you say entirely accessible, but that actually, if I might just break in there, I think that's the thing, entirely accessible in terms of electrons. I'm guessing like Yoad and Rich. These instruments are, and I'm making a supposition here. There's a certain amount of kind of the curtain almost comes across for me, and I just think, well, I'm not going to find the time to learn how to use this. How could I use this without having to become a kind of a product evangelist for Elektron and getting that deep? Maybe I've come to you for it, Rich, because you've devoted a certain amount of time into the Roly universe, right? You decided I'm going to put that time in that, and I'm going to do that. Would you do that?
I've gone deep into a lot of phases of my career. I've gone deep into gear that some of which is no longer in existence. But I've done that. It's a different world now, but yet, pardon me. It's not daunting to me to have to do that, and the fact that the thing offers amazing creative possibilities, and that you actually have to become one with the machine in order to achieve them. That's not a problem for me. I don't mind that so much. The thing about this thing that I didn't understand is why anybody would pay $500 for 6 channels of Roland 808 when you can buy the Behringer for 3. Or whatever they're selling it for, 6 with all of the channels. In other words, I just don't understand this thing as a product. But then again, I haven't seen it, and I really don't have much experience even with the promotion yet because it's brand new. So
I think it'd be about $300. So it's
about
not
300. Yeah,
it's going to be
which this Elektron thing.
Yeah.
The one on their website that's a companion sort of thing to this
samples.
Yeah, is over $500 here.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So maybe, well, on here,
but whatever it is, it's a 6-channel product for $300 then, and now that's ambitious, I would say.
Interesting. Well, even some of those tracks obviously are chordal as well as just single. I mean,
right. Okay.
Yeah. So,
again, I haven't got.
Yeah. No.
Really
exactly. I totally understand.
Can I just cut in, Nick? I just looked on the website. So £299 UK pounds for the cycles is the price from the Elektron. Direct from Elektron, so I'm guessing probably around $300, just over $300, I suppose. Maybe someone in America could just go online to the Elektron site and have a look.
Yeah, that would help. I know. Yeah, so I mean, sorry.
Is it not just basically 6 channels of 808 drum sounds?
No.
That's what I heard.
All of the music.
That's what I heard.
Yeah,
in the videos that I watched.
No, it's all there's music and polyphonic tracks as well. So it's
that performance by Cenk that you played a little bit of is a very good example because that's full music and that's all coming from that device.
Yeah. I'm guessing something like this, it sort of requires you to sit in front of it, and I know you're very much about sitting in front of where you are. You've designed your whole workflow to be able to do work on everything from where you are. So this perhaps doesn't speak to you in the same way unless you're about to go mobile.
Yes. At the same time, my work for Waves involves a lot of UI and UX design and product design. And for me to really dive into something, it's not something that I do it if I'm required to do so by a certain project that I'm involved in or something like that. But I wouldn't do it for fun because it's work. Do you know what I mean? So that's where the hobby kind of becomes when your hobby becomes your job. Sometimes
path of least resistance.
You don't want to do something. Yeah, because I remember, the first synths that I had, I used to erase the whole memory and start building the preset banks from scratch, from sine waves and stuff like that. And that's how I learned the DX7 and the Matrix 6 and all that. And that's how I learned to synthesize basically through and obviously the Poly 6 before that and things like that. So it's something you do for yourself because it teaches you on the actual device, but it teaches you the way of thinking of the people who made those things. And I have to say that I have quite enough of that because that's what I do for a week out of every month. I'm being one of those guys that other people will have to say, oh, did they do it like that? Is it like I'm expecting it to be? Is it where doing what it's supposed to be doing? And I have to think, and not alone with the team, with the product, specific product that we're working on at the time, about all these aspects and all these things. So for me, it's not. But it seems like it has a lot of functionality on the surface. So that could be as a fun thing, not trying to delve too deep into it, just to play and get some useful noises. It seems like fun.
I suspect.
But you know that I'm a bit reluctant to add more boxes to my setup, and that's a limitation. I think I should maybe in my bedroom I should have expand the setup a little bit or something like that, so I can try new stuff. Because over here I'm just reluctant to do anything. So I need
because it'll
maybe
change
in the live room actually. I have another.
I can imagine that. Yeah. So you create a sort of station with a rotating amount of gear that you could just continue kind of playing. I get that.
So there is another function though, just worth mentioning, that this does function as a class compliant audio interface, and it doesn't work with overbridge. So just a few things that are kind of. But the model samples didn't either. So yes.
So just to stereo out, which is that's a bit of a shame. But yeah, I guess that's the price. I mean, that's what the differentiation is. But I wanted to throw that in there because it was live and everybody else had gone live with it, and I didn't know anything about it apart from what just came up. But I just figured if you want to check it out, there are videos. Luke Pop and Bo Beats have both done their reviews. At the point of release, which is obviously cool. Okay, I think what I'll do is let me see. Where should we go next? Gosh, it's so hard to know. I've thrown the topic list in order completely out of the window almost straight away. Let's maybe start with it. Let's start with this one. We'll go back to this interesting vocal.
There is no instrument that emotionally touches a listener as directly as the human voice. Welcome to a walkthrough of our new scoring library called Mysteria. I'm Uli from Galaxy Instruments. Mysteria is all about adding deep vocal expression to your music or to picture. It's about intensive moods captured in unique performances of exceptional choirs. And it's about controlling their emotional intensity easily in real time. Mysteria's moods range from beautiful to dark, melancholic to aggressive, dreamy to desperate.
As I all often and famously say, I won't play the whole thing, but this looked really interesting. And one thing that came across for me was obviously it's been recorded with some quite big choirs and all sorts of very interesting articulations, and they're using sort of XY pads kind of, but it took me right back to kind of 1970s BBC scary series like the Aylesbury Stones, the Stone Circle stuff. There's a whole genre and period of time when this kind of almost like screech opera vocal articulation was the flavor for the sound of horror and the sound of suspense, and this it sits right in there. I'll go to you, Rick. I mean, this is kind of hard. It's the sort of thing that's quite hard. Are you unmuting there, Rich, in anticipation? This looks like a really interesting product, but it's almost a very sort of niche product, because how many projects would you use something like this on, I suppose?
Yeah, there's a lot of this lately. There's a lot of this sort of just add water soundtrack generation kind of stuff that's showing up. This thing is very clever, and it sounded great in the demo, and does a lot of very cool things that mostly I don't need to do. But again, it is a just add water soundtrack generation kind of device. It's sort of does everything for you. You just move in an XY field until you find some combination of things that's cool and you use it. It seems like, based on the demo they showed me. It sounds wonderful. It's very clever in the way it works. And I suspect it'll be included with Complete within 5 years.
Maybe so. Here's the people at their business. That is an awesome looking space. What the size of that? And there's a huge pipe organ in the background. It looks a little bit like what's the place? So it's a funk house, but obviously a more modern version of it. I'm not sure. I mean, I'll tell you what. I'll come to you guys because, and this is I'm being completely stereotypical here. You're more likely, perhaps, to do a concept prog album that may require the services of something like this that you would probably be able to do yourself, given enough time.
I would try and do it with a choir, though. I know there's a choir I sometimes do stuff with in Bristol, so I'd want to do it myself with a real choir. I was thinking when you were talking about that, though, the classic voice thing that you didn't mention, though, is the Ligety stuff. In Space Odyssey.
Oh yes, yeah, that's it.
Which I think it's really
the opening, isn't it? It's the sort of that weird stuff that around the what's the monolith? Yeah,
monolith. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'd rather do this kind of thing myself, I think, and record a choir and just try and do something, that's personally for my big prog epic. But this is really cool, though. This is a cool piece of software. I mean, there is horror is really popular format again, isn't it? In terms of there's been a lot of big horror films out in recent years. So I think horror does tend to come in and out of and really kind of more kind of gothic horror sort of stuff, does so I can see that there is a like a kind of a bit of a trend that this kind of neatly fits into. there is that thing, that aspect, I guess it's like the envelope of a mouth, isn't it? Really, that.
Yes, exactly. Sorry, somebody in the chat room just said just sample the carol singers, which I thought was a bit. Is obviously very different.
I remember on yourself on an album. I mean, that's the thing, isn't it? Just like a bit of pitch shifting of some carol singers.
And it's demonic instantly.
On an album a few years ago, we sampled the Fish Fingers advert. I only catch the best for the captain's table, and all these children
you
all
are so
go,
him as well.
Drop that down in pitch. I only catch the best for the captain's table, and then all the children all screaming. You drop the pitch of children screaming, and it's like, it is horrific. So just record a children's playground, and just drop that down a couple of octaves, and it's terrifying. But I mean, I think this is cool. Do we know it's quite big? It's a multi-gig library, isn't it? It is kind of
pretty large.
Huge. It's 29 gigs,
30 gigabytes.
30 gig
download size. That's probably compressed. So it's a lot of. You definitely need the project that you had in mind for it. You wouldn't have it hanging around necessarily. But I guess the thing is with that XY, I mean, a lot of the examples are animated. So there's probably fixed points in there which are particularly beautiful or particularly poignant. I know, and I can't imagine in much of your pop work there's call for this sort of maybe this kind of voicing. But, I could be wrong. You might be about to start a new genre.
Exactly. Maybe that's the ingredient I was looking for, Maybe that's just what I need to polish my pop productions. I think I think it's one of those things that I would really love to have and to play with and to enjoy. It's like when you're getting a new synth, you press a note and you say, wow, what a sound. And so it's kind of one of those things, but then it's very specific, so I'm not sure what I can use it for, but I can totally see like
there's going to be a purpose,
theater music and film composing and all that. I'm sure that within almost like 80% of the films you can squeeze in one kind of sweep on this.
There aren't that many. Mysteria audio demos and presets. Maybe there are some more pretty ones.
That's pretty.
That's pretty. Let's see whether there's anything.
You know what? I think that probably my main problem. Sorry.
Now everything you're saying has a sinister tone, just because
my main issue with this product is that it all seems to be kind of inharmonic, so it's hard to. So you must have that, and that's it. Sound effects or timps or something like that, but it's not like you can add it to something in the chorus.
I know, that's what I'm looking for. I was looking for something that was more harmonic, but that's a very good point. That's a bit more. Here we go. There you go, Johan, if you're looking for any inspiration.
Okay, yeah.
I like this.
That sounded pretty good. So, I think that's what I was trying to get at. There's probably moments in there that are less wow, but are still useful. But yeah, it's interesting. It's 30 gig download. It's Contact. You need 6.2 and up? 6.2 and higher. Either player it'll work in or the full version. So either one.
By the way, have you noticed that Contact is now finally is just Contact, because it used to be Contact 2 and then Contact 3 and then Contact 4, and then if you had a project saved with Contact 2 or Contact 3, then you installed Contact 4, you would still have to run all the earlier versions of Contact so your old projects can load up. So it wasn't, so each one, and now I think, and I'm hoping that it's backward compatible, at least with itself. So whenever it will be like version numbers rather than Contact.
I didn't know that. That's useful because
7 or something. Yeah.
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 Well, if you want to check this out, this is Native Instruments. It's called Mysteria, and it's I think it's 269. So it's a chunk of change, but it's the sort of thing that if you're using a lot of vocals, it sounds like there are some sweet spots in there, and more they're prettier things. It's not just about atmosphere and kind of terrifying the neighbours. You know, there's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than that. So I thought I'd just throw that. Let's just take a brief interlude and have a word from our friends over iZotope, who will be there's a competition for Ozone 9 Advanced. Stay tuned.
Building on a 17-year legacy in audio mastering, Ozone 9 brings balance to your mix with never-before-seen processing for low end, real-time instrument separation, and lightning-fast workflows powered by machine learning. Expect lower CPU usage and shorter startup times with Ozone 9 compared to Ozone 8. Experience fluid metering in a fully resizable environment that lets you track the most subtle details of your audio. Use more plugins at once, mix while you master without worrying about slowdowns or dropouts. And immerse yourself in a smooth, modern experience designed to keep you in your creative flow. As you can see, Ozone 9 is the fastest way to get your master off the ground. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to check out our other videos and head to iZotope.com to learn more about mixing and mastering and to download your free trial of Ozone 9.
And of course, like it says in the video, please, just head over to iZotope. You can check it out. It's a very powerful system. And we had a competition. We're having a competition this week, and the competition is in fact a Twitter competition, and we're looking for the tweet which contains the following: a hashtag full. Oh, I didn't write a new one. That's annoying. Damn, I knew I'd forgotten something. Quickly, what shall I put? Mix control, epic mix control. Yeah, this is live epic mix control. We're looking for the hashtag epic mix control and the hashtag Ozone 9 to at Sonicstate and at iZotope. Thank goodness for that. And you have no idea how complicated that is, because I've got to quickly think, have I used that one before? No, I haven't. So the hashtag epic mix control and the hashtag Ozone 9 to at Sonicstate and at iZotope Inc. will enter the competition. We have a winner for last week. The last week's competition winner is somebody called David, and it's David Ashman 1000, and they tweeted back of the net and the requisite hashtags and at signs. So David, if you want to get in touch, you have won a full copy of iZotope Ozone 9 Advanced, and will be winging its way towards you. One thing I did want to say is, actually, I don't know if you saw this. We've got Jean-Michel Jarre is going at Synthplex. Synthplex is happening in March. Jean-Michel Jarre is doing the keynote speech. So if you want to check that out, he'll also be receiving the what's the award called? It's called the Synthplex Golden Era Award. Synthplex course is in its second year. And it's in Burbank, California, and it's a sort of LA-based synth show, and it's kind of the first of its kind of that scale. And so this year is the second year, and they've actually given us a discount code. If you wanted to go, we've got a 20% off. Let me see if I can scroll up the details here. Yeah, here we go. We've got a 20% off the 4-day pass, which is $20 saving. You look at, if you go to the bit.ly URL, bit.ly/synthplex 2020. See what we did there? 2020 with a 20% discount. And if you go there, it will sort of pre-fill in the form and you click go and you'll get the discount applied. But if you just end up finding yourself there, use the code Sonicstate20, and that's March the 26th to the 29th, which I wanted to put in there. That's I'm sorry, I just tossed that in, but I did promise. You might have seen there's some ads around the place. The reason I'm doing this is because they're helping us send a reporter over there so that we'll be able to cover the show and bring you some videos. And so in return for a hotel room and a ticket, we're plugging their show, which I think is a fair trade. Full disclosure and all of that. But yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Jean-Michel Jarre, actually. What were you saying, Gaz?
Yeah. Well, we saw him, didn't we? He was there at Superbooth last year. We caught up with him he was there just for about half an hour. I was going to say, though, just before we move on to the next topic, can we plug the SSL SiX mix?
Yes, yeah. Well, that's true, because I know Rich had a question. Yeah, well, I don't know if you saw, Gaz reviewed the SSL SiX, which is desktop super analog mixer, which is essentially got kind of some of the real good stuff that SSL's got, and this is not sort of USB powered stuff. It's Class A mic preamps with transformers and, you know, the stuff that you can't get unless you've got a decent power supply in it. So, and one of the things that came up, it's actually been quite popular for a mixer review. They don't usually kind of go all that far, but it's already done reasonably well. I know Rich had a question, but it did beg the question. Lots of people sort of going, why do I have to pay so much for this kind of stuff? Why can't I just buy a Xenix or a Mackie? And it's like, yeah, of course you can. And you get something different. You know, this has got the bus compressor. Rich, over to you, because I know you had a question for Gaz about the SSL SiX.
Well, first of all, it wasn't so much a question as a sort of a discussion topic. I really enjoyed the review. It was incredibly thorough, well demonstrated, well prepared.
Thank you.
You had everything pretty much at your fingertips, ready to go, including you didn't even hit pause once. You went and grabbed the bass. You were just in a flow. It was freaking awesome.
Thank you.
Now, as I look at this product, to me, 50% of its functionality is in those D-sub connectors, and without it, people correctly point out that it's got certain input and output limitations, and you pointed out that you can't get to the insert points and stuff. But one of the things that they profess this thing to do, and I may have the numbers wrong, so correct me if I do, is that it's a 12-channel summing mixer, analog summing mixer. You have actually 12 ways into this thing that you can use to sum analog outputs from some interface or desk, and that. At that price point is an awesome thing to be able to have at your disposal.
And that can all go through the bus compressor then, those 12 inputs. But you would need, you need the D-sub, so as you correctly mentioned.
It's only really half the machine without fully wired D-subs and probably some kind of patch bay to get you there. Because as you point out, one of the most enjoyable observations for me was you pointing out that the labeling is in a place where you can't see it.
It's ridiculous. I literally I was having to take photo of my phone and chuck it around the back, and just to be able to see where to plug things in. I really think that is really daft. However, I have to mention one thing that I didn't put in the review though, and I felt that I should just mention that was I've really enjoyed having this here, and initially when it was brought in for review, I was just having it on the side just to sort of then just as a sort of just like an additional inputs, but I realized it was doing it a great a disservice, and it has to be very much central in your workflow. That's the whole kind of design
interesting
ethos of it. But I then I thought, well, okay, so I know that it's going to seem expensive at about £1,100. Now, it's expensive when you compare it to things like a Behringer mixer or whatever. But if you kind of compare it to, say, 500 series units or whatever, it's not so expensive. And the audio quality is very, very good on it. So I expect the performance would be comparable to much higher end gear. But the thing I wanted to mention though was the particular unique kind of controls on it. Like it's got a monitor section. I talk about this in the review, with like dim and mono and whatever and alternatives. So to actually find a small enough unit that you can route signals around, have it as sort of ways to send stuff out through analog processing and that sort of thing. There really isn't anything else quite like it. I thought, okay, because assuming when this thing leaves, I'm gonna really miss it now. So I was thinking, let's have a look. Let's have a look at what other alternatives are around, and I couldn't find anything that had a remotely similar feature set. So that was one thing I left out of the review, and it was only kind of after I filmed the review that I kind of realized that it sort of exists in a sort of field of its own, really. Just the particular combination. I'd just like to point out now,
you need one of these. This is the mirror on the stick.
Oh, I see.
Which you can then turn, so you can
yeah.
So that's the thing. So then you can read your labels. There you go. There's my screen in front of me. That right there. That's one thing that I would suggest in your situation.
The funny thing is, like,
all that. all that. Yeah, take a photo. But I suppose the thing is it's not always that. Johan, I mean, there's a man sitting in front of a whole chunk of Neve, but I'm guessing you must have done a lot of SSL mixing, in your time as well, right?
Yeah, totally. That's my favorite desk. That's my favorite analog desk for mixing, even though I own a Neve, but I mainly use the Neve for the mic pre's and the EQs and compressors for recording rather than mixing. And if I do a summing mix, then I would use the faders and stuff, and it's fine because it sounds amazing. But actual mix work, which I now do, well, for quite a few years in the box, I used to do on SSLs. That was my preferred platform. The 4000, 8000 is a really good one, but I like the J and the K, the 9000 as well. They're a bit different. The compressors are different. Everything is different about them, but they do sound good in their own right. They have better preamps and stuff. So one thing I would say about having a unit like that, if you're not in an environment such as this, or even, I can set it up in the live room or something like that, is the ability to, like as mentioned, to do summing, which is something that contributes so much to the sound. When, depending on the style of music, obviously, when needed or when I feel like I want this extra kind of, I don't know, beefiness or warmth or whatever you want to call it, then I do a big summing sort of splits to the desk. But even with 12 channels, you'll get a lot. And I have to say this as well. Even if you take your converter, your output, and record it, make sure you're not feeding back, that the channel is off when the recording channel is off when you do it. Even that will give you some kind of, not great, but some kind of, it enhances the stereo image a little bit, because there's noise, there's quantization noise, there's electronics noise, and which makes the mono, the phantom image, quite smeared. And everything else is a bit wider. It's a bit softer. The transients there's phase, and there's a lot of electronic component, not latency, but capacitors and things like that, which kind of make dents in the transients. So all this, even with a stereo thing, but not to mention a 12-way summing mix. So that could be really good. And also the fact that you have connectivity between your sound card or your computer and the outside world, which is not based on a couple of jack leads or something like that. You have a D type. It feels, and it's compatible with like all the gear I have. Not all, but a lot of the stuff I have. My converters and stuff are all on D type. So it could be very convenient to just, you want to record 8 channels or something, 8 tracks or something, you just get it in, plug it in, and you're ready to go. And you have the master bus compressor, which is always a nice thing to have. I don't know about the versions, the revisions, blah, blah, blah. I have one here. Some people say that there are better ones. Some people say that that's the best one. It doesn't matter. They're all good. I mean, in my experience, nothing sounds like the one in a desk in a 4K. There's nothing that sounds like it. My external one, it doesn't sound. It does the job, but it's not that. There's something about it. It's going through the VCA, the desk VCA, the power supplies, the whole thing, which makes it just sounding different. But they're all good. So yeah, it seems a bit pricey. But if you need something like that, then it seems like a good thing.
It's interesting that what you were saying about the summing, because I'm sort of, my mind's being drawn back to this concept of analogness, and as when you hear we were talking about with drum machines, the fact that things that are just, they're cyclical stuff, components are adding this kind of just general movement, whether that be to sort of the frequency response or the stereoness. So you're bound to get this kind of this increase because if you do it totally in the box, I mean, you can emulate that stuff, but it's not as the same as having discrete channels that are living and breathing things before they become the stereo bus. Maybe I'm over romanticizing there. Rich is looking slightly quizzical there. I don't know. No, okay.
I don't know if I want to say you're romanticizing or not. I'm currently romancing the heck out of this Studio One soft tube product and this Studio One console one. I'm sorry.
Okay. The one with the fader.
Chatting about Studio One. Actually, not the one with the faders. What's in front of me is the one with the knobs. But the one with the faders is gorgeous too. And it's actually shocked me as to how much it's brought life into the in the box experience was surprising to me. That said, it's not the same.
I have to agree. I agree with that completely, because the compressor on there and the EQ are really, really nice, and the fact that you can feel it in your hand, but it's the sound as well, because if it wasn't up, so there's certainly an experience there, which is kind of ear palm sort of thing, which is nice.
I don't have one of those giant consoles next to me, so I'm really excited about it, because it's the best I've been able to get life. Right. It feels like the sound is jumping out of the speakers the way it does in an actual analog studio with a big console that sounds great and somebody who knows what he's doing. So I'm quite enjoying it. But that said, of course, that's why I brought up the summing component, because I think it's actually a huge feature in this product. And also, I don't think it's expensive to have two SSL quality mic pre-inputs available to you. That's worth at least half the price of this unit alone. Yeah. Just those two channels of input before you get to anything else is worth more than half the cost of this unit. And I don't think it's not a comparable unit to almost anything else. And Gaz made that point. It's a completely unique product. And I think it's a very, very cost-effective solution to a ton of things, and it's a really, really well thought out product. I'm very impressed with it. I haven't used it, but I mean, as a concept and what I've seen and with Gaz's demonstrations, it's fantastic.
I mean, rather than have you come in there, Gaz, I mean, I would encourage maybe people to go and watch the review, because obviously we've published, half an hour of content on the dedicated to the unit already. So
there was just one little thing I wanted to say is that the fact is, what I've really enjoyed, though, I'm not sure if I even mentioned this, so is that I have the computer when I come into my studio. Often I don't even boot my computer up, turn this on, and if I, and that's just like maybe an over. It's a very simple thing to say, but
so you can make noise without having the computer on.
And that's super cool. That was just that was
that's a fair point. I think horses for courses. It's interesting. Okay, now I wanted to go here because I mean there's been a number of things. I mean, we haven't mentioned the B word for quite a long time. Behringer have now they've released a ton of System 100 module clones, which actually there's sort of almost one a day for the last week or so, which I haven't really covered on the podcast. We know what they're doing there, but one thing that they've also done is created a sort of new web community for buying and selling gear, freemusictribe.com, which is another interesting thing. So I mean, this idea that there's this sort of, I mean, it's the juggernaut that keeps on coming towards us, and it's doing a lot of positive things and a lot of other things as well. But I just wanted to bring this up because this is kind of taking on people like Reverb and people like eBay for selling direct musical equipment, and it seems to have done. I mean, the first week of its existence, it was actually they didn't have enough servers on it. So now there's a whole bunch of gear on there and all of that kind of stuff. So that's one aspect of it. But then there was also the news that Tatsuya Takahashi, who was the guy behind a lot of the really cool initial, the sort of first wave of Korg analog, has opened Korg Berlin, which is like basically a wholly owned subsidiary of Korg. They've basically decided to build. Well, let me play this a little bit.
This is the model that I made a couple of weeks ago.
So this is them in their building that's to be in Berlin.
Our architect, Felix and
Tats, who I have to say is an extremely good-looking gentleman based on this video. I mean, he's very, he really does look great. And, whatever your persuasion, you can't deny it.
Really? Like a quiet room, which we've called the library.
But anyway, so what they're doing there is it's really interesting, and they're also there's two guys. There's him and a guy called Max. I've forgotten his surname now, and they've started this kind of notion of it's like a Korg R&D department effectively, and they're going to build stuff, and they're hiring. They're looking for engineers. They're looking for support staff. They've got this 200 square meters office which they're opening in the spring, and this seems to me maybe I'm overlooking other aspects, but it seems to me like a very well timed and perhaps designed response to this juggernaut that's just coming and blowing everybody out of the way. Hey look, we're going to do something as well. I just thought it was worth a discussion. Maybe I'll come to you first, Gaz, because I think this is probably there's no denying that Behringer are really sweeping away a lot of smaller people. We've seen there's all sorts of controversial stories in the cloning stuff, and whether or not that you go for that, but you can't deny there's a whole bunch of stuff coming from them which is going to dominate the market, and it's important that we have competition, I think.
And innovative competition,
yes, and innovation.
And I think that's the thing about this. That my takeaway from this, though, really is that Tats is an incredibly innovative and experimental designer of equipment. So him having that based in Berlin, which is, as we know, the kind of really is
it's the epicenter at the moment.
The epicenter, absolutely. So this seems like really cool. It's kind of interesting that I think Tats really shook things up when he was at Korg in Japan. Because Tats has spent a lot of time in London, so he brought a lot of this kind of maker community inspiration and into the kind of corporate behemoth that is Korg. And then of course he left Korg to work with Red Bull, and I think Red Bull has now pulled the plug on all its music side of things. I'm not sure about that.
I didn't know that. Okay.
So I wonder whether this kind of then meant that actually Tats had got himself set up in Berlin, and now, or whether this was always whether this was always a plan that was going to happen. But I think it's certainly very exciting, and he, his. The little monotron is very easy to overlook just how important.
It was huge.
Yeah, how important that was. But obviously, every time I see Tats now,
it's really nice.
Yeah, every time I see Tats now, though, I just get a little shudder of embarrassment.
Oh yeah, your dance, yes, the Volca mix. Let's not go there. But it's really, I don't know. I don't know. You're based in London, and some of us are based in sort of more. But it's a really smart move because essentially, I think, Ed, because if you imagine you're hiring for people for Berlin, people will have gone to Berlin to follow their dream, probably. They might be following their kind of like, I'm really into synths, I'm really into electronic music, I'm going to Berlin to be in amongst it. So immediately when you have your job interview from people, if you're looking for people in Berlin, you're setting up in Berlin, you've already got this kind of passion behind them. So if they're engineers and they made the move to Berlin, or maybe they live in Berlin, I imagine there are some indigenous people who still live in Berlin as well, but probably most of the people who would apply for this are likely to have converged on this cultural centre. And I think that's the interesting thing. And it's, I don't know how it works with, when you're recruiting, for instance, creative people, but that would seem like the perfect gene pool, effectively, right?
Yeah, for synths, yeah, definitely. For electronic music, for all that, Berlin is synonymous for all those things. I think that regarding the kind of Behringer, takeover or all that, I think one has to ask themselves whether, what is your opinion about Amazon? Because it's a similar thing. It's a similar thing, but Behringer is kind of doing it in a niche, in our sort of niche, yeah. So we're more aware of it. But basically, I use Amazon, but I'm not sure how I feel about it. You know what I mean? It's too convenient to not use. But I'm not entirely, well, I wouldn't say I'm against it, but it does harm.
Does it make you feel slightly dirty? Is that what you're trying to say? Yeah. I
kind of. At the same time, I think I mentioned once that I would love to have a Behringer subscription model, because I would, like if you pay, I don't know, however much a month, and then you get all those little toys in the post. That could be amazing, because they're releasing them quicker than plugins, basically.
Well, they're
and
announcing them.
They cost kind of, and but still, there's quite a few products out there.
Yeah, that's true.
And they don't cost much more than plugins, and they're fun to have. And I don't know, it's quite appealing.
That's an interesting
I'm not
idea.
sure.
An interesting idea.
Yeah.
I don't know where. Well, I mean, of course, famously, because you've got your fabulous studio there, and then in the centre section you've got the BCR 2000, which is been customised.
Yeah,
I asked you whether you've got like a whole bunch of them in the cupboard, because it's so central to your workflow. Yeah, you know. But actually,
I know one of the knobs is actually starting to play up, but you know, it has the virus kind of panel, so it gives it a little bit of
extra class.
Red. Yeah, I get.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I don't know. I mean, first, the news that Korg are doing this is, I mean, it's a really big statement, and that just the way that it's been publicised, this sort of, it's a very long recruitment video, which is saying, won't it be cool to be here? I think that's an interesting way of going about things, and I hope it yields a lot of fabulous stuff. And but that's important, right? That we get this innovation that's from more than one company, right?
Absolutely. I support these people 100%. I watched their video. I don't know any of them. I may have met this guy. We did Red Bull events, music events, I don't know, some years ago. And if he was involved with Red Bull, it's possible that I met him. But I mean, it was interesting to watch a video where they're showing you models of potential mock-ups of the office space, because they're basically in a deconstructed space from the 1800s, and they're going to have to basically build this entire thing in this space to make it work. And he had a really cool vision of how that should go, and I could see their dedication to and their planning for this taking place. And I thought it was really fascinating that they're recruiting in this way. And yeah, of course, it's a hotbed of creative potential over there. There's been a ton of groundbreaking and cool stuff that's come out of Germany, that's come out of Northern Europe, that's come out of England, that's come out of France. I mean, Scandinavia. There's a lot of really cool innovation that's taken place there, and I'm all for it.
It's interesting, I think, that there's a sort of, for me anyway, there's a sort of subtext here, because it's essentially, you know, Japanese companies are generally quite secretive. You know, they generally kind of let you know, here's the product, you know, or they'll consult on a very closed basis with a bunch of musicians. What they're doing here is going, here, we're going to Berlin, here's a ton of money. You can see we're putting a ton of money into this. This is a statement of intent, which is quite public and unusual for that reason.
Well, interesting point. And if you remember things about the Monotron and the Monotribe and things like that, which was a real incredible break from a Japanese tradition, was the fact that they made it kind of open to modding. They kind of listed things on, you know, they kind of made things on
labels
the
on the piece, that people discovered. That's right.
Yeah. Now this was entirely from Tats and from, as I say, I think from his kind of London experiences, but was really surprised. We didn't know. Well, it took a while, I think, before we kind of learned who Tats was and his background. But that was a real surprise at the time that Korg were embracing that sort of circuit bent kind of, you know, which, as I say, feels incredibly different from that more corporate Japanese approach that we were used to. So I kind of see this thing in Berlin as an expansion of that sort of thinking, and that, you know, a Korg being kind of brave enough. And it also goes to show just how the strength of someone's personality and vision can really,
yeah, you know, well, he's kind of a superstar in terms of design. Yeah, Rich.
He must be, because in my experience, being in Japan and talking to people who do business in Japan, this seems like they've come to realize that a lot of the innovation, the most crucial innovation that's taking place in this market right now, is no longer taking place in Japan, even if it's taking place with Japanese companies. And so it's very somewhat unusual and very forward-thinking for them to want to go to where the action is to get some of that into their workflow. And I'm sure that this man's presence, Takashi-san's presence with the company, has forwarded them into this analog synth thing and has really kind of reshaped the perception of Korg as a company outside of the Kronos. And I think it's fascinating from a corporate standpoint that a Japanese company is willing to go outside of Japan for this.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think and I think the fact that they're if you watch the whole video, those viewers who are watching this, you'll see they multiple times say they're looking for engineers. So it's almost like a kind of A&R. It's like opening an A&R office in Europe where a lot of cool stuff's happening. Get people to come in, because I'm sure other companies are doing the same. You know, so it's like trying to get a stock of different thinkers and get some more people. Because I mean, there are lots of companies which rely on brilliant, tried and tested engineers, you know, in the industry who have made brilliant synthesizers and done fantastic work and continue to do so. And presumably, you know, but perhaps they are not going to be thinking so far outside of the box as some kid who's just graduated and has a load of like wacky ideas about how things should be done, you know. So that's the thing I think that's what's cool. Anyway.
Yeah.
I suppose, well, it's 5 o'clock. It feels like it might be a good time to kind of consider. I know there's a couple more topics in the list, but we've got to 5. Unless anybody was particularly wed to any of them, I suggest perhaps we draw things to a close and I'll let everybody get on with their day-to-day business, because I know everybody's busy in their own ways. So, and I've got stuff to do myself. So perhaps what we'll do is we'll say goodbye and we'll run things down. So, Yoad, thanks very much for joining us. It looks like you're ready to call up a session and start mixing the instant this is done. I don't know whether
I just need to do this.
Yeah,
all I have to do is do this.
Do is that and move the mouse so the monitor comes to life, and that's it. Then you're good.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. Well, yeah, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure as ever, and lovely to see your new camera and the new viewpoint. I've still got the MIDI wall. Has anything new gone into that rack behind you in the last, I don't know, period of time since we've spoken to you?
I don't. I've got a new Electro Harmonix Attack Decay pedal installed in the. I don't know if you can see it.
Yeah, there's a pedal thing which kind of gets. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
there's the pedals.
Oh,
nice.
there is.
Lovely.
Yeah. Have you got a Modrex, Yoad? Have you got the Modrex
No.
Harmonix?
No.
That one looks really cool.
No.
Yeah.
Well, that seems quite restrained. So good for you. I mean, I'm glad that I'm just trying to think what I've done. Oh, well, actually, what I've been doing. Speaking of Behringer, I got a guy, Rich, who used to do our guitar stuff. He got in touch, and he's now working in London as in a kind of marketing capacity. And he's started a YouTube channel which is to do with electronic vehicles, so scooters, bicycles, cars, whatever. And so he's doing a piece which, or said he was going to do a piece which he needs a sound for an electric scooter to make so that people know that they're coming. So they're going to try this experiment with a Bluetooth speaker strapped to a scooter to see. So he said, could you do some sounds? So I've done them in advance, and we're going to shoot a little piece where he says, hey, Nick, I need someone to make it.
Sounds interesting.
I'm just going to do klaxons and stuff like that. And then I realised I need something that's a bit more kind of, considered. So, and I just used the Behringer Poly D for the whole thing, just to sort of create these little kind of blippy motory sounds. And that was a really interesting project. And unfortunately, I did like 15 or 16 sounds. Let's see if I can find any of them.
What you need for something like that is to get CV from the revs, from the motor revs.
Yeah, I know.
CV
I agree.
to your pitch. And then you're sorted.
Exactly, but unfortunately, it's not at that stage. He's gonna strap a Bluetooth speaker to it. And I've got one of the sounds is here. I don't know if this will play. So that's one of them. I went for this sort of Jetsons, slightly kind, non-alarmist. So I went from these. I quite like that one. That reminds me of the sped up New York crossing.
But imagine riding on one and hearing it for half an hour. You'll go crazy.
Well, it doesn't have to be that loud. That's why it's high pitched. It just needs to be loud enough. What's the other thing?
I think you need something more sort of like an electric, more phasery kind of thing.
I got some more.
You slow that one down, you get the phaser a little closer.
That's the Jetsons.
Like that one. Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
You like that one? He didn't like that one.
I like that one.
I think that was a good one. I got some more.
That's very futuristic, yeah.
That's the UFO. Hold on, what else did I do? That's quite ominous. That sounds like you're about to be alien abducted, doesn't it? By somebody on a scooter. Let's see.
You want to go to the toilet.
Yeah, anyway, you're right, but it's an interesting project. But anyway, I digress. Yoad, thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you.
Pleasure.
And Gaz as well, thanks again for your SSL SiX review. And it seems to have done great. I look forward to doing some more stuff with you.
More pro audio, please.
Yeah,
that's what I mean. We're trying to do more. Yeah, that's
we're working on it for sure. But yeah.
Yeah, great. Thanks, everybody. See you soon.
Yeah, thank you for having us. And also, Mr. Rich Hilton there. I guess, have you got a full day ahead, or are you basking in a bit of time off and you can just mow the lawn and watch daytime TV for a bit?
It's somewhere in between those two scenarios lies the truth.
So the robotic lawnmower while watching daytime TV.
Right, well, and I'm quite looking forward to using some of those sound effects you just showed us with the lawnmower as it's putting throughout the
Putting
lawn.
along,
Yes. It's actually a little cold for that sort of thing here today, but
it still is here. Well, we've still got the river's still up, although it's dropping down a little bit. So I'm hoping, but the trout season is starting soon, so I'm going to be going out on the lake and fishing for trout in the next couple of weeks. I'm really looking forward to it. Okay.
Well, in a month.
Yeah.
In a month, if I may, we're going to be playing Roger Daltrey's Teenage Cancer Trust week at Royal Albert Hall. We're doing a show there. So
cool.
Any of you Brits who'd like to come and get funky, let me know.
Oh, nice. Thank you very much.
We can meet up.
All right, that will be great to meet up for sure. All right, well, that's it for this week. Thank you very much for watching. Don't forget, if you want to enter the competition to win a copy of Ozone 9 Advanced, iZotope Ozone 9 Advanced, we're looking for the hashtag Epic Mix Control, not hurriedly put together at all, and the hashtag Ozone 9 to @Sonicstate and @iZotope Inc. So if you want to put those, and don't forget also we've got the offer on Synthplex. If you want to go to Synthplex, which is the 26th to the 29th of March, 20% off 4-day pass. You follow the code, either you go bit.ly/Synthplex 2020, or when you're there buying a ticket, you can put the redeem the voucher Sonicstate 20, and that will save you 20% off the 4-ticket price. Anyway, that's it for this time. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you all in a week or so. That's it. Thank you very much for watching. See you next time. Bye-bye now.